The smell of white lilies. That's what I remember most about that day. That cloying, suffocating sweetness that sticks to the back of your throat. To most people, it smells like peace. To me, it smells like betrayal. It was raining in Seattle that morning. Not the soft, romantic mist you see in movies, but a hard, freezing rain that soaked through your clothes and settled in your bones. We were standing at the graveside of Arthur Blackwood, my father-in-law, a titan of industry, a man feared by his competitors and adored by the charities he funded. But to me, he was just Artie, the man who taught me how to play chess, the man who sat with me in the hospital waiting room when I had my miscarriage, while his own son was too busy at work to show up. I stood there, clutching a black umbrella that was threatening to turn inside out in the wind. Next to me stood my husband, Richard. He looked impeccable in his bespoke Italian suit, his jawline sharp, his eyes dry behind designer sunglasses. He didn't look like a grieving son. He looked like a man waiting for a business meeting to start. And on his other side stood her, Beatrice, my mother-in-law. Beatrice didn't cry. Beatrice didn't do emotions. She stood perfectly straight, her silver hair coiffed into an indestructible helmet, clutching a handkerchief she had no intention of using. She looked at the grave not with sadness, but with a strange sort of impatience. As if Arthur's death was just another item on her to-do list that she had finally checked off. "Sarah," Richard whispered, nudging me with his elbow. "Stop slouching. The press is over there." I straightened my back, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Sorry," I whispered back. I'm going to miss him, Rich." Richard let out a short, sharp sigh. "Yes, well, he had a good run. 82 is a decent age. Don't make a scene, Sarah." I looked at him, really looked at him. We had been married for 6 years. When we met, he was charming, ambitious, maybe a little spoiled, but he seemed to have a heart. But over the last 2 years, as Arthur's health declined and the reality of the inheritance drew closer, Richard had changed. He became colder, sharper. He spent more time with his mother, whispering in corners, stopping their conversations whenever I walked into the room. The priest finished his prayers. People began to disperse, heading toward the fleet of black limousines that would take us back to the Blackwood estate for the wake. As I turned to walk toward our car, Beatrice stepped in front of me. She was a small woman, but she had the presence of a tank. "Sarah," she said, her voice like cracking ice. "You won't be riding with us." I blinked, confused. Rain dripped from my umbrella onto my shoes. "What? Why? It's the family car." "Family," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were sour milk. "Richard and I have matters to discuss regarding the estate. Private matters. You can take the staff van. Or call an Uber. I don't really care." I looked at Richard, expecting him to defend me, expecting him to say, "Mother, stop it, that's my wife." Instead, Richard checked his Rolex. "Just take an Uber, Sarah. Meet us at the house. And try to fix your makeup before you get there. You look like a raccoon." They turned their backs on me. I watched my husband open the car door for his mother, help her inside, and then slide in after her. The heavy door slammed shut with a sound of finality. I stood alone in the rain, surrounded by strangers, realizing that the only ally I had in the Blackwood family was currently 6 feet under the ground. Chapter 2, The Mask Slips. The wake was a blur of expensive catering and fake condolences. The Blackwood estate was massive, a sprawling mansion overlooking the Puget Sound. It was filled with people drinking Arthur's vintage scotch and eating shrimp canapes, talking about stock prices and golf handicaps. I spent most of the time in the kitchen, helping the catering staff. It was where I felt most comfortable. For the last 3 years, I had been Arthur's primary caregiver. While Beatrice was wintering in Palm Springs and Richard was closing deals in New York, I was the one changing Arthur's 4 bags. I was the one reading to him. I was the one holding his hand when the pain got too bad. I knew this house better than Beatrice did. I knew which floorboards creaked and which window Arthur liked to sit by to watch the birds. "Sarah?" I turned around to see Maria, the head housekeeper. She had tears in her eyes. Maria loved Arthur too. "Mrs. Blackwood is looking for you," Maria whispered, looking nervous. "She's in the library. With Mr. Richard." "Thanks, Maria." I wiped my hands on a towel and headed toward the library. My stomach churned. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be a pleasant chat about funeral arrangements. The library was dark, lit only by the fireplace and a few lamps. The smell of old leather and cigar smoke hung in the air. Richard was sitting behind his father's massive oak desk, Arthur's desk. He looked comfortable there. Too comfortable. Beatrice was standing by the fireplace, swirling a glass of sherry. "Close the door," Beatrice commanded without turning around. I closed it. "Maria said you wanted to see me?" Richard looked up, a tight, artificial smile on his face. "Yes. Sit down, Sarah." I sat in one of the guest chairs. I felt small, like a child being called into the principal's office. "We need to talk about the future," Richard began, interlacing his fingers. "Obviously, with Dad gone, things are going to change." "Of course," I said softly. "It's going to be hard without him." Yes, emotional toll, blah blah," Beatrice snapped, turning around. Her eyes were glittering with something that looked disturbingly like triumph. "We're talking about logistics, Sarah. Practicalities." Richard cleared his throat. "Here's the thing, Sarah. This house, the estate, the lifestyle, it's expensive to maintain. And now that I'm taking over as CEO of Blackwood Industries, I need to focus entirely on the business. I need a partner who understands that world. Someone who fits the image." I frowned. "I don't understand. I've supported you for 6 years. I hosted the galas. I took care of your father when you couldn't. You were a glorified nurse." Beatrice spat out. "Let's call it what it is. You were useful when Arthur was sick because we didn't want to hire a stranger. But he's dead now. The job is done." The air left my lungs. "Job. Is that what I was to you?" Richard stood up, walking around the desk to lean against it. He crossed his arms. "Sarah, look. We've grown apart. You're a simple girl. You like gardening and cooking. You're not cut out for the level of life I'm ascending to. And frankly, I've met someone else." The world stopped spinning. "What?" "Her name is Vanessa," Richard said casually, as if telling me what he had for lunch. "She's the daughter of the senator. She understands my world. We've been seeing each other for, well, a while." 6 months, Beatrice interjected helpfully, a smirk playing on her lips. "She's delightful. Sophisticated. Comes from a good family." I stood up, my legs shaking. "You're divorcing me? On the day of your father's funeral?" "Actually," Richard said, pulling a document out of a drawer, "I'm annulling our prenup. Or rather, enforcing the clauses you didn't read closely enough. But that takes time. What we are doing today is simplifying the living arrangements." He tossed the document toward me. It slid across the polished wood. "We want you out," Beatrice said. "Tonight." "Tonight?" I choked out a laugh, bordering on hysteria. "Richard, this is my home. My clothes are here. My life is here. It's 8 p.m. "It's my house," Beatrice corrected. "Arthur put the deed in a trust years ago. With him gone, I am the primary trustee until the will is read next week. And as the owner of this property, I am revoking your invitation to stay." "You can't do this," I whispered, looking at Richard. "Rich, please. Where am I supposed to go?" Richard shrugged. "You have a sister in Oregon, don't you? Go there. I've already canceled your credit cards, Sarah. It's a joint account, and I froze the assets to prevent theft during the divorce proceedings. Standard legal procedure." "You froze my money?" "My money," he corrected. "You never earned a dime. Sarah." I felt a surge of rage I didn't know I possessed. "I gave up my career to care for your dying father, because you were too busy sleeping with the senator's daughter. I saved this family thousands in medical bills. I kept his dignity alive. And you were compensated with room and board," Beatrice said coldly. "Now get out. Maria has already packed 2 suitcases for you. They are by the back door." "The back door?" I stared at them. "The front is for guests," Beatrice said, taking a sip of her sherry. "You are staff. Discharged staff." Chapter 3. The Long Walk. I didn't fight. I knew it was useless. In that moment, looking at their cruel, impassive faces, I realized I didn't want to stay in a house with these monsters for 1 second longer. I walked out of the library. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I walked straight to the kitchen. Maria was there, crying openly now. She pointed to the back door. 2 suitcases, my old beat-up ones from college, not the Louis Vuitton set Richard had bought me for show, were sitting there. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sarah," Maria sobbed. "They made me do it. They told me if I didn't pack your things, they'd fire me too. And I have 3 kids." "It's okay, Maria," I said, hugging her. She felt warm and real, the only real thing in this house. "Don't lose your job over me. Take care of yourself." I grabbed the handles of my suitcases. "Wait." Maria reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a crumpled wad of cash. "It's not much. $80. It's all I have on me. Please take it." I tried to push it back. "Maria, no." "Take it," she insisted, shoving it into my hand. "It's raining. You need a cab." I took the money, tears finally spilling over. "Thank you." I stepped out into the dark, rainy night. The back door clicked lock behind me instantly. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I dragged my suitcases down the long, gravel driveway. The wheels kept getting stuck in the mud. The rain was torrential now, soaking through my black dress, plastering my hair to my face. I was shivering so hard my teeth chattered. I reached the main gate. It was closed. The keypad needed a code. I punched in the code I had used for 6 years. 1-9-4-2, Arthur's birth year. Beep beep beep. Red light. Access denied. They had changed the code. "You have to be kidding me." I screamed at the camera mounted on the pillar. "Richard, open the damn gate." Nothing. Just the red eye of the camera staring at me. I looked at the stone wall. It was 6 feet high. There was no way I could climb it with suitcases. I had to leave them. I opened the bags, grabbing only what I could carry: my laptop, a warm sweater, and a framed photo of me and Arthur playing chess. I shoved them into my tote bag. I left my clothes. I left my shoes. I left the jewelry. I climbed the wall, scraping my hands and tearing my dress. I dropped down onto the wet asphalt of the public road on the other side. I was drenched, bleeding, and homeless. I started walking. Chapter 4. The motel. I walked for 3 miles before a truck driver took pity on me and pulled over. He drove me to the nearest town, a gritty little place called Renton. He dropped me off at a neon-lit motel called the Sleepy Inn. It was the kind of place where you pay by the hour. I used Maria's $80 to pay for 2 nights. The clerk, a guy with a greasy ponytail, looked at my muddy funeral dress and my tear-streaked face and didn't ask a single question. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and bleach. I sat on the edge of the sagging bed, shivering. I stripped off my wet dress and put on the sweater. It smelled like lavender, the detergent Maria used. I curled up on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I had nothing. No husband. No home. No money. My phone was dead, and I realized with a jolt of panic that the charger was in the suitcase I had left behind in the mud. I was 32 years old, and my life was over. I cried until there were no tears left. I cried for the betrayal. I cried for the cruelty. But mostly I cried for Arthur. He was the only one who had ever protected me, and now he was gone. Or was he? My mind drifted back to a conversation we had 3 weeks ago. It was late at night. Arthur was on high-dose morphine, drifting in and out of consciousness. He had grabbed my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Sarah," he had rasped, "beware the wolves. When I go, they will come for you." "I know, Artie," I had soothed him. "I can handle Beatrice." "No," he had whispered urgently. "Listen to me. The blue book. Remember the blue book. The blue book. In the library. Top shelf. Behind the geography section. If they hurt you, find the blue book." At the time I thought it was just the morphine talking. Arthur loved books, but he didn't have secret codes. But now, lying in this filth, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked like a skull, I sat up. The blue book. The will reading was in 5 days. Beatrice and Richard thought they had won. They thought I was gone, crushed, humiliated. They thought I would crawl back to Oregon and disappear. I looked at the framed photo of me and Arthur. He had a mischievous twinkle in his eye in that photo. "You knew, didn't you, old man?" I whispered to the photo. You knew exactly what they would do. I wasn't going to Oregon. I needed a charger. I needed a shower. And then I needed to figure out how to get back into that house and find the blue book before the lawyers arrived on Monday. The widow wasn't going to fade away. The widow was going to ward that I spent 2 days in that motel room. I survived on vending machine crackers and tap water. My anger had hardened into something cold and sharp, like a weapon. I knew the Blackwood estate schedule better than anyone. Sunday night. That was key. On Sunday nights, the regular security guard, Frank, had the night off. His replacement was a guy named Kevin, a college kid who spent his entire shift playing video games in the guard booth with his headphones on. At 2 a.m., the rain had stopped, leaving a thick, heavy fog covering Seattle. It was perfect. I wore my black funeral dress, the hem pinned up with safety pins I found in a motel drawer so I could run. I had tied my hair back. I looked like a shadow. I took a bus as close as I could get to the estate, then hiked the last mile through the woods that bordered the property. I knew a spot in the perimeter fence where the ground had eroded, leaving a gap just big enough to crawl under. Arthur had told me about it once. He used to use it to sneak out as a teenager. I crawled through the mud, scraping my stomach, and emerged onto the manicured lawn. The massive house loomed ahead, dark and silent. I didn't go for the doors. They would be alarmed. I went for the conservatory. Beatrice loved her orchids, but she hated the humidity control system. She always left the top vent cracked open for fresh air. It was 15 feet up. I found the trellis covered in ivy. It was slippery, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. I climbed, my fingers aching, until I reached the vent. I pushed it open and squeezed through, dropping down onto the soft, damp earth of a flowerbed inside. I was in. I moved through the house like a ghost. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot to my ears. I made my way to the library. I paused outside the door. I heard voices. My heart stopped. It was 2:30 a.m. Who was awake? I pressed my ear to the heavy oak door. Can't sell it yet, Richard, Beatrice's voice hissed. We have to wait until the probate clears. I have a buyer in China who wants the tech patents, Mother, Richard replied. He sounded drunk. Arthur held this company back for decades with his ethics and charity nonsense. We strip the assets, sell the patents, and we walk away with $200 million cash. Each. I clamped a hand over my mouth. They weren't just going to take the inheritance. They were going to dismantle Arthur's life's work. Everything he built. Everything he cared about. What about Sarah? Beatrice asked. What about her? Richard laughed, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. She's probably in a gutter somewhere. Once the prenup holds up in court, she's history. She's too weak to fight us. Good, Beatrice said. I never liked her eyes. She looked at us like she saw us. Let's go to bed, Richard yawned. Big day tomorrow. We have to pretend to be sad for the board members. I heard their footsteps fade away down the hall. I waited 5 full minutes, shaking with rage, before I dared to open the door. Chapter 6, The Blue Book. The library was pitch black. I didn't dare turn on a light. I used the small, dim screen of the old phone I had kept. I had pawned my laptop at a shop in Renton to buy a cheap burner phone and some food, but I kept the SIM card. I moved to the geography section. Arthur's instructions echoed in my head. Top shelf. Behind the geography section. I dragged the ladder over. I climbed up. There, sandwiched between an atlas of the world and a book on ocean currents, was a small, blue leather-bound book. It wasn't a published book. It was a journal. I grabbed it and climbed down. I sat on the floor, hidden behind the heavy desk, and opened it. There was a hollowed-out compartment inside the pages. Inside sat 2 things. A silver USB drive. A handwritten letter. I unfolded the letter. My eyes filled with tears as I recognized Arthur's shaky handwriting. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, then my worst fears have come true. My wife and son have shown you their true colors. I am sorry I was too weak in my final days to protect you myself. I knew about Vanessa. I knew Richard was stealing from the company accounts to fund his gambling debts. And I knew Beatrice was planning to cut you out the moment my heart stopped beating. They think I was senile. They think I didn't notice the papers they tried to make me sign when I was on medication. But I saw everything. On this USB drive is a video recording I made with my private attorney, James Sterling. It is my final, irrevocable will and testament. It supersedes everything else. Take this drive to James Sterling immediately. His office is on 4th Avenue. Do not trust the family lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He is in Beatrice's pocket. And Sarah? One last thing. When you walk into that boardroom, hold your head high. You are a Blackwood. More of a Blackwood than they will ever be. Checkmate. Love, Artie. I kissed the paper. Checkmate, Artie. I whispered. Suddenly, the library door handle turned. I scrambled under the desk, clutching the book to my chest. The lights flickered on. I could have sworn I heard something, Richard's voice grumbled. I saw his slippers walk into the room. He walked right up to the desk. I held my breath, praying, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought he'd hear it. He paused. He reached for a bottle of scotch on the desk, right above my head. Paranoid, he muttered to himself. Need sleep. He turned off the lights and walked out. I didn't move for 10 minutes. Then I slipped out the window, back into the fog, clutching the weapon that would destroy them. Chapter 7. The Shark. Monday morning. 8 a.m. I stood outside a glass skyscraper in downtown Seattle. I looked terrible. My dress was torn, my shoes were muddy, and I hadn't showered properly in 3 days. I walked into the lobby. The security guard looked ready to kick me out. I'm here to see James Sterling, I said, trying to project the confidence Arthur told me to have. Do you have an appointment? The receptionist asked, looking at my muddy hem with disdain. Tell him Sarah Blackwood is here. Tell him I have the blue book. The receptionist hesitated, then made a call. Her eyes went wide. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. She hung up. Top floor. The penthouse suite. Go now. James Sterling wasn't just a lawyer. He was a legend. He was known as the Shark of Seattle. He was Arthur's oldest friend and the only man Beatrice feared. When I entered his office, he was standing by the window. He was a tall man in his 60s, wearing a suit that cost more than a car. He turned around. When he saw my state, the dirt, the exhaustion, his face darkened with a terrifying anger. Not at me, but for me. My God, he whispered. Arthur told me they were vultures, but this is barbaric. He walked over and guided me to a chair. Did you find it? I placed the USB drive and the letter on his desk. He plugged the drive into his computer. He watched the video in silence. As he watched, a slow, predatory smile spread across his face. Brilliant, he murmured. Arthur, you magnificent old fox. He looked at me. The official reading of the will is at 10 a.m. at the Blackwood headquarters. Richard and Beatrice are expecting Mr. Henderson to read the 2015 will, which leaves everything to them. Can we stop them? I asked. Sterling stood up and buttoned his jacket. Stop them? Sarah, we are going to bury them. He pressed a button on his intercom. Jessica, cancel my morning. And call the luxury boutique downstairs. Tell them I need a full fitting for a VIP client. Immediate service. Hair, makeup, shoes, everything. He looked at me. You are not going into that room looking like a victim. You are going to look like the CEO. Chapter 8. The Transformation. An hour later, I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. The muddy funeral dress was gone. In its place was a sharp, tailored navy blue power suit that fit like armor. My hair was blown out sleek and straight. My makeup was flawless, hiding the dark circles under my eyes. I wore 4-inch stiletto heels that made me stand taller than I ever had. I looked dangerous. Ready? Sterling asked, checking his watch. Ready, I said. We took his private car to the Blackwood Industries headquarters. Chapter 9. The boardroom. The conference room was all glass and chrome. At the head of the long table sat Beatrice, looking like a queen on her throne. Richard sat to her right, looking smug. Next to him was a young blonde woman, Vanessa. She was actually holding his hand. At the will reading, the audacity was breathtaking. Around the table sat the board of directors and Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer. Well, Beatrice said, checking the clock. It's 10:05. Sarah isn't here. I told you she wouldn't come. She knows her place. Let's get on with it, Richard said, putting his feet up on a spare chair. Read the will, Henderson. I have a tea time at noon. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat nervously. Very well. Being that all interested parties who matter are present. Bam. The double doors swung open. I walked in. James Sterling walked a step behind me, carrying a silver briefcase. The silence in the room was instant and absolute. Richard's feet dropped off the chair. Beatrice's jaw actually unhinged. Vanessa looked me up and down, her eyes widening as she took in the expensive suit. Sorry I'm late, I said, my voice calm and steady. Traffic was murder. What is she doing here? Beatrice screeched, standing up. Security. I want this woman removed. Sit down, Beatrice, James Sterling boomed. His voice filled the room like thunder. James. Beatrice paled. You have no business here. Mr. Henderson is the executor. Not anymore, Sterling said, placing the briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. Mr. Henderson is fired for malpractice and conspiracy to defraud an estate. Security is already escorting the police to his office to seize his files. Mr. Henderson turned the color of milk and slumped in his chair. And as for you, I said, looking directly at Richard. I walked slowly around the table. The clicking of my heels was the only sound in the room. I stopped behind his chair. I leaned down close to his ear and whispered, You wanted a partner who fits the image, Richard? You wanted someone sophisticated. I stood up and looked at the stunned board members. My name is Sarah Blackwood, and Mr. Sterling has a video that you all need to see. Sterling connected his laptop to the main projector. Gentlemen, he said, the late Arthur Blackwood has one final statement. The giant screen flickered to life. Arthur's face appeared, looking frail but sharp-eyed. Richard looked like he was about to vomit. Beatrice gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Play it, I said. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. On the giant screen, Arthur Blackwood sat in his favorite armchair, looking directly into the camera lens. This video was recorded on November 12th. Arthur's digital voice filled the room. 2 days before I went into the coma. My mind is sound. My memory is clear. And I am heartbroken. On screen, Arthur leaned forward. To my son, Richard. I know about the gambling debts in Vegas. I know you've been siphoning money from the charity fund to pay them off. $2 million to be exact. A gasp went through the boardroom. The directors turned to look at Richard. He was sweating profusely, his face pale green. That's a lie, Richard shouted, standing up. It's a deep fake. Aye. He never said that. Sit down, the chairman of the board barked. Arthur continued on screen. And to my wife, Beatrice. I know you've been waiting for me to die since the day I got my diagnosis. I heard you on the phone with your real estate agent, planning to sell the house before my body was even cold. Beatrice's mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no sound came out. You both treated Sarah like a servant, Arthur said, his voice trembling with anger. She was the only one who washed me, fed me, read to me. You two didn't visit for weeks. You only came when you thought the end was near, circling like vultures. Arthur paused, taking a sip of water on the recording. So, here is my final judgment. Under the terms of this new will. The room held its breath. To my wife, Beatrice, I leave the sum of $1. This is to ensure you cannot contest the will by claiming I forgot you. I didn't forget you, Beatrice. I just don't like you anymore. To my son, Richard, I also leave $1. And a piece of advice, get a lawyer. You're going to need one. And to Sarah. Arthur's face softened. He smiled, a genuine warm smile. To Sarah, the daughter I never had, I leave everything. The Blackwood estate. My 51% controlling interest in Blackwood Industries. My entire investment portfolio. And the contents of the Blue Book, which contains the evidence of Richard's embezzlement. Arthur leaned back. Sarah, don't let them bully you. You are strong. Take care of the company. Take care of the people. And throw them out of my house. The screen went black. Chapter 11, The Handcuffs. For 3 seconds nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. This is insane, Beatrice screamed, throwing a glass of water across the table. It shattered against the wall. He was crazy. He was drugged. I'll sue. I'll burn this company to the ground. Richard lunged toward me. You bitch. You manipulated him. You poisoned his mind. He didn't get far. James Sterling stepped in front of me, broad and imposing. I wouldn't do that, Richard, Sterling said calmly. Or what? Richard sneered, his fists clenched. You think a piece of paper scares me? No, Sterling said, checking his watch. But they might. The boardroom doors opened again. 4 police officers walked in. Richard Blackwood? The lead officer asked. What is this? Richard stammered, stepping back. We have a warrant for your arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and fraud. We received the evidence file from Mr. Sterling this morning. Vanessa, the senator's daughter, suddenly let go of Richard's hand. She grabbed her purse and started backing away toward the door. I didn't know, she cried out to the room. I just met him. I have nothing to do with this. Vanessa, wait. Richard pleaded as the officers grabbed his arms. Don't touch me, she hissed. I'm not going to jail for a broke loser. She ran out of the room, her heels clicking rapidly down the hall. The officers handcuffed Richard. He looked at me, his eyes wide with terror. Sarah, please. Tell them it's a mistake. We're family. I'm your husband. I stood up slowly. I walked over to him. I looked him dead in the eye. You're right, Richard, I said softly. You are my husband. Which is why I'm going to enjoy signing the divorce papers while you're in a cell. The prenup says I get nothing if I leave. But it says I get everything if you are convicted of a felony. I smiled. You really should have read the fine print. They dragged him out, screaming and crying. Chapter 12, The Eviction. Beatrice was still sitting in her chair, trembling. She looked small and frail now. The arrogance was gone. Sarah, she whispered. Sarah, darling. You can't be serious about the $1. I'm an old woman. Where will I go? I looked at the woman who had thrown me out into the rain 3 nights ago. The woman who made me sleep in a cheap motel. You have a sister in Florida, don't you? I asked, repeating Richard's words from the funeral. Go there. Or call an Uber. I don't really care. But the house. She stammered. My things. It's my house, I corrected her. And I want you out. Today. Security will escort you to pack 2 suitcases. Just 2. The rest stays. You can't do this, she sobbed. The front door is for guests, Beatrice, I said, pointing to the exit. You are trespassing. Please use the service elevator. She looked at the board members for help, but they all looked away. She stood up, leaning heavily on the table, and shuffled out of the room, a broken woman. I turned to the board of directors. They looked terrified. They were wondering if I was going to fire them too. I took a deep breath. Gentlemen and ladies, we have a lot of work to do. Arthur's vision for this company was about integrity. We are going to bring that back. Meeting adjourned. James Sterling winked at me. Chapter 13. Epilogue. 6 months later. The sun was shining on the Blackwood estate. The garden was in full bloom. I sat on the patio, drinking tea and playing chess. Across from me sat Maria, the housekeeper. I had promoted her to estate manager. She didn't have to clean toilets anymore. She ran the household staff and had a salary that paid for all 3 of her kids to go to college. Check, Maria said, moving her knight. You're getting better, I laughed. My phone buzzed. It was a text from James Sterling. Update. Richard's trial ended. 15 years. No parole. Also, Beatrice tried to sue for elder abuse, but the judge threw it out. She's living in a state-subsidized facility now. The karma is complete. I put the phone down and looked out at the ocean. I thought about the night I climbed the fence in the rain. I thought about the fear. And then I looked at the beautiful home around me. I wasn't just a widow anymore. I wasn't a victim. I picked up my queen and moved it across the board. Checkmate, I said. Maria smiled. Arthur would be proud. Yes, I said, looking up at the blue sky. I think he would. I took a sip of tea. It tasted like victory. End of story.